Hello, welcome to Low Tier Talks League, the podcast that delivers every week as long as your weeks aren't yours. So, we are going to be talking about our summer predictions. Um, so, we're just going to go through the roster. I made a nice document for DJ, and I don't remember if we use our names. I'll also introduce myself. I'm Jay, and this is DJ.
I feel like we have before. This is also the first one of the decade. Jay, you didn't say that?
It's the first one of the decade.
Hooray.
Um, Maybe the first one in the last 10 years. I don't know. It's hard to keep track of these sort of
No.
things.
No, we've done it the last couple years.
So I just wanted to go through DJ and kind of go through the rosters as they placed last year,
Uh-huh.
um, and then kind of talk about where we think they're going to be. But before we go into that, um, the summer playoffs are a little bit different than what you and I remember.
The world is a different place, Jay. We have to start making things a little less in person, a little more over online, which means we got to change things up a little bit, especially when it means we had to cancel an entire event, a mid-season invitational because of it.
See, I'm not actually referring to all of that. I'm sure that's going to stay changed. I was actually referring to the fact that the playoffs are now the top 8 teams instead of top 6. Loser
Yeah.
bracket, 7 and 8 seed start off in the loser bracket. First 2 seeds still get their bye, and then third through sixth will have to fight off in winners bracket. Losing going to losers bracket. This is double elimination tournament. This is what people have wanted for Worlds for a very long time. Um, and we're not really going to discuss all of that. We're also, when we talk about rosters, we're not really going to talk about the TSM drama. I think Thorin's got that pretty on point. It's old news at this point. So
Yeah.
I just want to talk to you. What do you think of this
This
new
new summer
playoff?
split.
Well, just the playoff format in general. Just what do you think about like 8 teams going double eliminations?
Hmm. I think it's going to give us a whole lot more playoffs, but at the same time, I think it's going to have the same problems that when we used to play for 3 game series for every game was. A lot of people might just not watch that losers bracket. They might just be like, "No, I'll tune in another day, watch the people I actually care about, look on Reddit for who actually won." Now, a lot of that is up in the air in another sense because our top teams, quote unquote, the ones with the largest fan bases over the years, haven't been doing as hot lately. And regardless of where they place, they're always going to get, like their fans looking in either to, flame their own team or, to try some cheer them on, like 2 or 3 people.
I
TSM maybe a little more this year, but definitely last year there was like 5.
Yeah, I
But
agree on that point. I don't think people won't watch. I mean, I guess that was the same argument of why they got rid of the third place match in the first place. But I think it's always kind of exciting. Losers brackets always has, not always, but losers bracket always has the potential of an exciting storyline. For example, as early as last spring split when G2 was eliminated in the first round of winners bracket, and it had to grind through losers bracket to win, and then you get the really hype salty run back where they're going against the same team that put them in losers bracket. Um, Although the European format had a lot of other issues, I didn't like the fact that the losers bracket had basically a free buy in the middle of it while they waited for the winners bracket to resolve, which meant that Mad Lions was at a slight disadvantage because they had to play consecutive weeks, whereas G2 played one week, had a week off, and had to play another week. Um, I do agree with you there. What do you think about the 8 teams, though?
well, I do want to hop in real quick and give
Okay.
you another example. Actually, um, talking about teams coming down through that losers bracket, we only have to look at the gauntlet. How many years have we seen C9 run through 3, 4 teams to get to end up winning the gauntlet? Like how much would you want to see like a losers bracket team have to play like 5, 6 games just to get to that final game
It's
and to be a possibility of winning it?
it's exciting for sure. Like I like the gauntlet format a lot. I do. I guess it's kind of less of a gauntlet just because. Well, no, I guess it is a gauntlet in the sense that you're just kind of like the worse you play, the more games you have to play. Um, what are your thoughts on? Well, you know what? We'll discuss this later. What are your thoughts on the eight team rosters or 8 teams going into playoffs out of 10?
It's a little odd, especially like I can see it a lot in like the regions that still have their like relegations
Yeah,
instead of just having, you know, the 2 teams that go to relegations and then, you know, 2, 3 teams that are just done. At least like they're basically no one's season ends once the season ends. Either you have to prove your spot or you are in playoffs at least for a short time. But obviously in LCS we're you know
franchised.
we're yeah we're franchised now, so those 2 teams are still just down it, and especially I mean the 6 worked out pretty well I thought with the amount of games, you know, you got the 2 quarters, the semis, or the 4 quarters, the semis, et cetera, and now we just kind of have more games, you know, tacked on. But we have talked about it. The losers bracket should be interesting. Having the double elimination should be interesting. Um, it will give teams like if you have a bad day, you can come back. But you know, we'll see. Especially with LCS, there's a lot of teams on here that I think having a bad day and having a good day, honestly, in a lot of these matches would not matter,
Yeah, I'm not. I'm
and they'd
not.
probably yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of sending that many teams to the playoffs. I mean, I come from a football background, not playing football, obviously, just watching football. Um, and I kind of like their format where of 32 teams, only 12 of them go. Even with the NBA, where 50% of the teams go, there are people complaining, saying, you know, if it's a coin flip, coin flip quote unquote, of whether or not you go into playoffs or not, like it doesn't really mean too much. And I always thought it was kind of like strange for the LCS where they were sending over half of their teams to the playoffs to the point where it almost just feels like embarrassing not to make it to the playoffs. And I guess that's kind of the point. But when you're sending 8 teams to the playoffs, that is where I think your complaint of maybe that's too many games is valid, because that is where last year there was like a five-way tie for the fifth and sixth place team, and if we had the if we had 8 team playoffs, then of course all of those teams would have gone. They were only one tiebreaker away from making it to the playoffs anyway. But how many years have we seen just multiple bottom feeder teams going into the LCS? And that's
I
kind of,
mean,
or into the in the LCS.
and that's the big thing, isn't it? Is especially, you know, we talk about the double eliminations from over in EU, where they also very clearly have like top tier teams, but they're mid tier teams. Usually, I mean, we saw a mid tier quote unquote team take down G2 and them have to claw their way back up and beat that same team again to go and thrash Fnatic in the finals. But when you look at LCS, like we've definitely had like one good team and then a whole bunch of crap. Maybe like a 2 third place team that are clearly like, okay, they'll fight out for whoever gets second, and then everybody else. And last split definitely didn't make that look much different. We may have had that third way tie, but it still looked like top tier, mid tier, bottom tier, and even then we had top tier and then top lower half tier more or less. And
Yeah,
in the end, we saw that with the result with C9 basically just blasting through playoffs is clearly the best team in LCS.
yeah. I don't even. I'm trying to think if they even had a game where they lost.
I
in
think
the
they dropped one
playoffs.
game.
Yeah, I think they did drop a game against Evil Geniuses. Yeah, they did. They did. But then they swept through FlyQuest, and it's just I think it works fine enough if you have multiple higher tier teams. But you're right. I think the most competitive regular season we had was 2016, where we had the double list roster of TSM. We had Immortals, who looked really good. We had CLG, who we didn't really know was going to be bad. Um, Cloud9. Like we had a lot of really strong teams there, but that season was so dominated by TSM and Immortals. So we'll see. At the very least, watching more games is always fun. You got to get those watch rewards.
Yep.
So I've got my list here of who I think is gonna be top 1 through 10.
All right.
And I'll go through it again at the end, but I just want to go through the rosters based on how they finished last split, in the regular or post playoffs. So the first team, Cloud9, um, the only one of two teams to make zero roster changes, which makes sense.
Yes.
When you go 17-1 in the playoffs, or 17-1 in the regular season, and you drop a single game out of three best of series, um, and you just look so dominating in every I really struggle to even think of games where it looked like they were going to lose. I think both TSM games and the last Team Liquid game were really the only games where you're watching Cloud9 and you think, wow, they might lose this game. Like this is a close game. This is a nail biter. And I guess I
Hmm.
guess the one game they dropped in the playoffs too. But I'll just stick to the best of ones for now. There was no obvious holes in their play. I would say maybe teams were able to punish Licorice a little bit more, but I think that was more of a result of Sven and Vulcan being the best bot laner in North America and Nitsky playing out of his mind last split, more than Licorice falling off or Licorice having an off year. And really, outside of that, I can't think of a single, you know, I can't begin to pen out a plan to beat Cloud9. When teams stop scrimming them, I wasn't surprised because you can't even write down on paper what you would do to beat them.
Hmm.
So I mean I guess all of that just to say I think it makes sense for Cloud9 not to change the roster at all.
Yep.
I don't know if you have anything more to add or
Um, I mean, I'll add more once I'm doing my rundown of my rankings.
all right. So next roster we have is going to be FlyQuest. The FlyQuest is kind of interesting because they did make one very small roster change. Um, and in the spreadsheet I sent you, I said that Solo came in during the playoffs. That's technically incorrect. He did come in, I think, week 8, but he was splitting time with Viper. Um, Playoffs was really when Solo became the de facto starter and not Viper.
Yep.
I don't know how I feel about this team. Part of me wants to think that they overperformed last year, but who did they overperform over? TSM, who after they beat Cloud9 just kind of looked lost, frankly. Um, they they beat Evil Geniuses, but I think if you were gonna look at a team and said if they overperformed, Evil Geniuses would definitely be on that list of teams who overperformed. I get that Solo is way better than Viper, but I'm not I'm not entirely sure if Viper was the only reason why people were sleeping on this team. And I think we can all agree that Wild Turtle is the elephant in the room here. He. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, go right ahead. I'm just agreeing with noises.
He. It's a really difficult situation for FlyQuest because on the one hand, Wild Turtle is the face of the franchise, which is huge for a franchise who had no identity until last split, except for Wild Turtle. Um, but it's difficult because he is probably easily the worst player on your team. Um, and I don't really know how you could fix that. I saw people speculating on Reddit that a big reason why Wild Turtle looks so bad is because he's constantly forced to 1v2. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I'll get into that when I go through my own rankings. That I'll go and I'll talk about this because you're right. I have a little bit to talk about Wild Turtle.
Well, I mean, we can. I mean, like, I'm not doing my rankings right now. I'm gonna do my rankings after we break down each roster. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Um, all right, then I'll jump in here then. Uh, honestly, I see a couple problems with this roster. Um, like Power of Evil, of course, can carry really well. Ignar is a very good support. Um, honestly, a lot of people, especially during the playoffs, one of the reasons Solo became the de facto is most people looked at his first performance. Were like, oh man, Solo played really well in this series, and then Viper played very poorly. And everyone was just like, well, why are they putting Viper over Solo? Why has Viper been playing this entire split? And Solo really hasn't been pulled out here. And he kind of got herd mentality into it, where honestly, I think Viper and Solo have very similar problems with their playstyles, where I feel both of them really pigeonhole themselves with like very certain picks, where like they're really good on those picks, and you give them anything else, and they're just kind of mediocre. Um, which of course remains to be seen. Like Aatrox is always going to come back into meta for some reason, but like there are going to be other top lane picks, and we really need to see like how these players that have literally more or less one trick to the LCS are going to look now when there are even more options up the top lane. So there's Solo for that. Of course, Wild Turtle always a wild card in a sense. Like there, of course, been games where he pops off, but I don't think he's popping off specifically because he's having like a really good game. He's playing everything mechanically perfect. It's more or less of Wild Turtle's doing really well right now because the enemy team is either being pushed back by someone else on the team, allowing Wild Turtle to do these flashy big plays, get quadras, etc., etc. Where like I don't think it's because he's particularly mechanically gifted. It's just kind of falling on him, and you can argue with that, like, oh, maybe that's just has to do with the overall weakness of the ADC role and how its impact is more or less just more of a backline you clean up or you just get blown up. But that's completely separate points. I think while Wild Turtle is a problem on this team, at the same time, there's still not like there's some good AD like we have a couple like a handful of good AD carries in the league right now.
yeah,
But there are other ones where I could see him basically just beating out with either experience or the enemy AD carry is also a coin flip, and it really just depends which face they flap on. Like with Stixay, depends on the day. It's more of a dice than a coin toss though, because there's one where he does good and six where he doesn't. Um, same with Bang. That's more of an actual coin flip though. FBI is looking all right. Sometimes he's decent, sometimes he's not. I
yeah.
think he also had a freshman split. So like maybe this is where we'll see like did he adapt? Can he play better with his team? Well, yeah. Or will he just kind of flounder like most imports tend to do? But I'm talking about other rosters right now. We'll get to that. More or less, I think Wild Turtle will do his job well enough. I think FlyQuest will probably still make it into playoffs, even with him being the weakling. But is he gonna? Are they going to be a powerhouse team? No, but that also remains to be seen because obviously rosters kind of just shuffled around more than anything else this season. And if it looks anything like last split, like everyone's still going to look really bad, except for two or three teams.
Okay. Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what you said. And we haven't even touched on the interpersonals of the fact that Solo. A lot of people were saying Solo was the best part of Echo Fox when he was on that team, and I think it was last year or 2 years ago where people were saying Solo was easily a top three mid laner, behind Impact and Licorice. But the fact that he didn't even get picked up for an academy team, he got picked up by FlyQuest as a coach before transitioning him into the academy, which I'm pretty sure they only did so that they could get him ready to play and replace Viper. I do kind of disagree. I do think Viper's maybe not disagree. I think Viper's weaknesses are way more egregious than Solo's. But I don't think that's what you were. I don't think you were saying that Solo and Viper were the same skill wise and problem wise. I do think Solo is an upgrade to Viper. I don't think it's a big enough upgrade compared to some of the other teams that we'll be talking about later. Although it is kind of surprising. I thought there was way more roster moves. And then when I put together the Excel sheet and started marking people who started last split, I quickly realized that there was not as many as I thought. So, but enough of that. Speaking of small roster moves, we have evil geniuses with, on paper, one move, but that move kind of comes with a price.
Yep. It's, I'll let you go into this first. Let's see what you think about all this.
So the big question mark on everyone's mind is, where does Huni fit in to this team? They've got Bang, they've got Jizuke, who are already imports. While Bang looked way better last year than he did in his inaugural NALCS debut on 100 Thieves the year prior, he still, for a world class ADC, still left a lot to be desired, I think. And in fact, while Bang was considered a rock for many of the wins that Evil Geniuses had, most of the praise fell on Jizuke, um, specifically praising his split push style that people claim it came from EU, I guess. Um, Kumo looked bad last year. I think statistically, Kumo was bottom two in every metric for top laners. Much like Wild Turtle was bottom two for almost every metric for ADCs, actually. Um, so Kumo was a big issue. I think Evil Geniuses kind of jumped the ship a little too hard in signing Kumo after his impressive single game that he started on Cloud9, um, with the rest of the academy team. So the signing of Huni makes sense, except that he can't play. He's still considered. I think he's a European import. No, he's still considered a Korean import. Now, granted, this is his last split as an import. Supposedly, next split he'll be a North American resident. But it's kind of weird to see a roster change for the next split in the summer, considering Evil Geniuses were real close to getting to Worlds last year, or not Worlds. Was real close to Well, yeah, they're real close to getting to Worlds this year. They took second place in the spring split. It's not like Dignitas or Immortals or even Team Liquid where they're going into the split. Oh, you know what? One of the things that we forgot to mention about the new playoff format is that spring split does not matter for Worlds. So I guess they're just as close as anyone else into getting to Worlds.
Yep.
But it's still kind of weird to see a team take second place and then on paper not really doing anything to fix the holes in their roster during the summer to make it to Worlds. Unless they want to start Giyu and throw in Hooney and Bang and take off the person that most people were saying was the best part of your team, or taking out Bang, who most people were also saying was the rock on your team, and putting in Deathly. I don't know. Maybe you're able to explain this a little bit better than I can, because I don't see how signing Hooney fixes anything.
Well, part of it could be, as you said, he becomes an NA resident next, split. And so they're like, "Oh no, we'll get Huni right now, and even if we can't play him all that much, we'll shackle him to the team so that we can pull him out, next spring split." But that's a long time away, and Huni's not known for staying on teams for extended periods of time, especially if he's not going to see starter position. So you're right. I think what's probably going to happen is they're going to switch out. I'd assume definitely for Bang. Um, they're gonna just kind of torpedo their bot lane in hopes that their top and mid will be able to carry. I haven't seen Hooney carry in like 3 years, except on the off random game where everyone's like, "Oh, that's the Hooney we remember," and then the game later, everyone goes like, "And that's the Hooney that actually plays." Um, so yeah, like especially like with all the rumors of how much he costs, like there's no reason Hooney should still be in NA right now. Should have flown back to Korea, maybe played some game, like maybe like a low tier team picks him up over there. Like I don't know why people insist on keeping him around, but yeah, I think they'll try to say like it's a roster idea of, oh, we'll put these players in when we want a strategy like this, and then we'll switch out for these players when we want a strategy like this. And what it's going to devolve into is one of these is going to play better. Who plays well enough that we just torpedo another lane?
So my big question with that though is, you put in Deathly and Zazel, um, or do you put in Deathly and Matt? Because Bang Zazel was not a great bot lane last year. Um, Deathly Matt has not been a great bot lane ever, I don't think. But Deathly and Matt have played together for about 2 years now, I think, in Academy. They've got pretty good um they got some pretty good synergy right now. I think last year actually, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure last year Deathly played for Cloud9 and Matt didn't. So they didn't play together for 2 years straight, but they have played together in the past. They've built synergy together. Um, Presumably they played last Academy. I don't really keep track of Academy. I'm sorry. Presumably they played Academy together last year. So do you replace Zazel and Bang for Deathly and Matt if you
I
had
don't
to
know.
replace both? If you had to replace two, and would Bang be happy with that, or would he be willing to jump ship? He did jump off of 100 Thieves after 1 year. Um, would he want to jump ship? Is there even a team for Bang to go to? These are not easy questions to answer. It's not fair to ask you on the spot. These are all just kind of
No,
things that Evil Geniuses has to consider. You can't just throw in Hooney, and especially since we haven't really seen Hooney hard carry games since 2016 Immortals. Um, then he went to Korea with SKT, and to be fair, he looked really good, but he didn't hard carry, and you could tell he was struggling against stuff like Khan, against stuff like Smeb, um, even who's the Freaka's top laner?
Keen?
Keen,
No.
yeah,
Oh, was it Keen? Okay.
yeah. Like you saw him like kind of struggle to the point where heading into heading into MSI, heading into Worlds, the question was, who does SKT bring for their sub? Do they bring Untara, or do they bring in like they had to wonder, do we sub in Pina or do we sub in Huni? And that's kind of like where he's been, and he comes back to NA on the worst team, one of the worst teams that split with Echo Fox, and that was the Huni. I mean, they had one good split where they placed top three, and then just Huni has not done anything since that Echo Fox split, and that was
Yep.
2018, I want to say.
And then of course you have the Korean mentality here a couple times of I'm just gonna go play a different lane.
Which
We
I don't
saw
think
like
he ever did.
are you sure? Well, didn't he play jungle a couple games?
He did, yeah. He played jungle. Like they were doing role swaps, but that was when ADC was really weird, and everyone thought that you had a role swap to win. They weren't the only teams to doing role swap, and that was probably one of the best that they've looked, quite frankly.
I can agree with that. But yeah, it really remains to be seen. I don't think it's going to do all right, but if every other team looks like trash, it'll happen like last split where they'll squeak by just because they have some explosive power in parts of their games. Like Svenskeren can be a coin flip at times, but he can carry games. Dazuke, same thing, but he can also carry games sometimes if he gets the good side of that coin. Bang, if he's a rock or not, is really dependent. Like that's why I think, honestly, they'll probably switch Deathly out for him. And to answer your previous question about all that too, of just like, well, do you think they'll be happy about that? I honestly don't think they're thinking that far ahead. I
That's fair.
think they're going to try anything that works. And if people get pissy and leave, they'll be like, oh, we never expected this. We thought everyone was going to be professional and everyone was going to shake hands and da 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 da. And then they'll buy another 80 carry next year if Bang leaves, or they'll switch in definitely and have a weaker roster. There's a million things. I
Yeah.
don't think they're thinking that far ahead. I think they're just throwing money at whatever, especially with the Hooney buy. I don't think they're thinking that far ahead. So I think they'll see where the chips fall and they'll deal with it then.
So the one last question, because we are kind of running long already, and we're only on team 3. Did Evil Geniuses overperform last year at third place?
I think so, yes. But overperform in the sense that we have had an incredibly weak league Sans Cloud9 last split. And I think with a couple of the roster moves, even though they weren't the most inspired of movements, they're still going to be at least, stitched together well enough that they're going to have to go against a semblance, even if it's a ghost of a stronger team, still a stronger team.
Okay.
And I think that's going to shake up where they stand. They're still going to make it into playoffs with this 8 roster because I still think there are some clear bottom 2 teams. But
Okay.
yeah, I think they're going to definitely be a little more exposed this time around.
I think I agree. So let's move on to team number 4, TSM. They made 2 roster changes. They put back in Spica for Dardoch, and they got Double Lift back with no controversy whatsoever.
The dream team without Hansard or Spence Garrett.
Yeah. So this is kind of weird for me because Dardoch way underperformed last year. I think Dardoch is still a good jungler, um, if not because of how much he dominated on Optics Academy the year before. Um, Also, I didn't realize this until I made it that they got lost. I wasn't sure who they replaced Tactical with. I guess I just never bothered to check. So here's my issue with this roster. Spica, in the granted in less than ideal conditions, did not look like a strong jungler. Um, we've seen already what TSM does with young junglers because of Mike Young, and to an extent Santorin. The other thing, and I think this is going to be the bigger issue here, is you have Bjergsen who can play. I'm going to use the term weak side, even though he plays mid. But he's able to. He can be a low resource mid laner. He doesn't need ganks to do well. Particularly since he starts going more towards these control mages, like these bursty control mages like Zillion or Syndra. But you've got Broken Blade and Double Lift, who are both very resource heavy players. And even last year, the games that Broken Blade hard carried, generally speaking, you just saw Dardoch right up there with him. Um, and double lift, I think he's kind of relaxed on needing jungler's presence all the time, but he does like playing late game carries, which is funny because I remember his signature pick used to be Lucian and Graves, who were early to mid game. But Olaf seems to excel a lot on these late game carries, and he likes to farm a lot. And I guess I see a lot of issues with his team. I see a lot of growing pains, which I think is going to be very frustrating for TSM fans. Because on paper, I think this is supposed to be a really good team. You have, um, you know, kind of a low resource jungler in Spica, and then you've got double lift back, which a lot of fans are going to be super nostalgic about. What's your take?
So correct me if I'm wrong here, but there are zero imports in this right now with the new rules, right?
Wrong. Broken Blade's still an
Or-
import.
I thought turkeys didn't, or people from Turkey didn't count as imports anymore.
I don't think that. I mean, if that's true, that would be in EU. That would be such a random rule.
Yeah, I remember something about specifically taking from the lesser leagues or something like that. I don't know. It was a while ago. I could not find it if I tried right now. But the real problem that I have with this, so I'm gonna preface this by saying I still think this team is going to end up on the upper end of the standings, just because I don't believe a lot in the other teams that are in this league, and I think at least this team already has some old synergies that'll carry them through against a lot of these bad teams, and will carry them through to playoffs, um, specifically to some higher ends of playoffs too. Um, I think Spica, who's already made jokes about it on Twitter, is going to basically just play a whole bunch of tank junglers. I think they're probably going to focus bot lane and probably leave Broken Blade out to dry, which I'm fine with. Honestly, like Broken Blade has had good moments, but he's had a like. I honestly, if we're gonna compare this to old like 2016 TSM,
Yeah.
I think Broken Blade is the worst version of Hanser basically every way from that time. Um, I don't think he could play carries as well. I don't think he could play tanks as well. I don't think he can play weak side as well. Um, so like either one of two things is going to happen. You're going to see this in every post game thread of every TSM game. Either Spica is going to hard camp bot, and Broken Blade's going to get destroyed, and the enemy top laner is going to go out of control, and people are going to complain that Spica isn't doing anything for top, and by extension, not helping Bjergsen carry mid. Which isn't going to happen because, like you said, and I agree with you, Bjergsen has definitely been sitting on control mages for the last few splits. I don't think that's a choice to play weak side. I think it's because Bjergsen realizes he's not getting any ganks and needs someone who can actually play in mid and sustain on by his own, while also being a focus for a large amount of the enemy jungle presence. Which might change this split, honestly, because I guarantee the other jungler is also going to set up camp bot. Or like I was saying, the other possibility is Spica's going to go top, and sometimes there's going to be like those Dardog moments from last split where Broken Blade is actually popping off and Spica's right up there with him. But what I think is more or less not going to happen is if Spica goes top and keeps doing that, they're still going to either stay even or be slightly behind every game. Double Lift's going to get camped, and everyone in the post game thread's going to be like, well, why aren't you just ganking for Double Lift? Just put all your eggs in that basket, and he's just going to avoid criticism for sloppy play like he does every split by people saying, well, his jungler is just crap. And I guarantee that's going to be every TSM thread is one of those two, depending on where Spica goes. And the fun thing about that is they're probably going to look at those post game threads every time and go, okay, Spica, yeah, we're gonna have you go to the other lane this time, and it's just going to flip flop back and forth, and this team is still going to get top four somehow.
So let me ask you this. Um, so I think we can both agree that Double Lift way underperformed for the majority of last split.
Yes.
How much do you think that was underperforming, and how much do you think that is just Double Lift finally getting exposed for I guess an older mindset.
Little column A, little column B. I think he definitely is not adapting as much as he used to. You brought up the fact that he likes to play a lot of league game scaling carries now. It's that is very funny when you think about it because he when he was back on CLG way back in the past, he was always known for being a super aggressive laner.
Yeah,
And
that's what I
he
was
is
thinking too.
and while he still does that, he does not do it on the champions that he should be doing it on anymore, which is why he's having a lot of problems with Senna. It's why he's getting camped a crapload bot when he's playing Kaisa or Callista, and he's not able to get out of these ganks, and he just feeds 2 or 3 kills before 15. And a lot of that is like he's just not willing to actually adapt. And we'll see if more or less they're just going to play, like I said, with the camp bot strategy, where he's not going to get exposed as much because of that, because he'll constantly have a jungler at his beck and call. Uh, but yeah, it is kind of a crapshoot of whether it's going to be A or B. But I think it's going to be a lot of just both those two scenarios. And even though, like I said, I still think they're going to end up being a top tier team just because there's too little competition and too much experience on this team for even like basic problems like that to keep them down, especially because this is going to be the redemption, quote unquote, for Double Lift, where he's gonna play his heart out this split, and he's gonna do really well, and he's back with his old team that he misses. He's got Biofrost back, and like I I think he's going to play as hard as he can. But I still think there's going to be problems, and like we might not see it in LCS because people just can't punish it because most of these teams are bad. But of course, you go into playoff versus Cloud9, or you go into regular season games against Cloud9, you're going to see it a lot. You go into regular games, basically just C9. Never mind. Yeah, more or less, it's more or less going to get exposed to that. And then when you get to Worlds, and they get to even like I'd say like the third set of teams, you're going to start seeing like, well, Double Lift still has the same old problems, and now his jungler's worse and his top laner's worse, and arguably maybe even his mid laner, depending on which Bjergsen shows up.
And I was even thinking, he has a worse support than he did in Core JJ too.
That's also an interesting coin flip, though, because while Corke JJ is very much a much better support, Biofrost was also basically made by Double Lift. Like, Double Lift basically made him into his ideal support
But
for a year on.
it's been 3 years though since they've played together. Biofrost has played with Stixay. He's played with Kabe. Um, actually, yeah, he's just played with those two. Um, so I think it'll be fun to see. I always liked watching Double Lift and Biofrost play together. Um, and I do like Biofrost as a support. So we'll see. Um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
we'll see.
on to the next team. We spent too much time. On to the next team. Although, in all honesty, I think we're probably going to go through a couple of these teams really, really fast. And then I think we probably have like 1 or 2 teams we'll probably fixate on, but I think we're about to speed up a little bit.
So we've got Golden Guardians. They're getting rid of the Golden Guardians, Grayson Gray, something, Golden Glue. What a weird name. Um, Great. Golden Glue is still here, Gilmer. Golden Glue is still on the roster. I'm pretty sure, as you saw in my roster Excel sheet, that he's just there to be trade fodder. And I could actually see him potentially going to a team like Evil Geniuses or Immortals or Dignitas, where they're just needing a resident and a mid laner. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Golden Guardians. Same exact roster as last year, with the exception of Huhi being presumably being their starting support after playing half of split last year. and then getting DeMonte. You'll see Ole on this. He was hired as a coach. He's not actually a support player. This split,
Mm-hmm.
unless they pull a solo. I don't think DeMonte is improvement over Golden Glue. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I think all you do is you mess with synergies that you already had for someone who has a different champion pool, but not necessarily a better champion pool than Golden Glue. And Keith is
So
also still on the team. Switched back
yeah,
to ADC, but that's not here or there.
I mean, you said switch back to ADC. I don't think he's seeing any ADC time this split
I would be surprised.
unless FBI gets sick
I
or
would still
dies.
be surprised. I think they would sooner sign someone else than start Keith.
That's true. Um, so they also have a really good, or at least as Reddit tells me, they have a very good academy mid laner too. I would like to see him on the LCS stage
A,
one of these days.
a Blaze Olive is really good, and I would find it hard to believe a Blaze Olive would do any worse than Golden Glue or Demonte. To be perfectly honest, he's been in academy for 3 or 4 years now. By the way, it's not like he's brand new to the scene. He's been in academy for a while, and he's been killing it. He for your information, since I don't know how much you follow academy teams, he was on TSM Academy, so he was learning on Bjergsen. Some of it during Bjergsen's better years.
Yeah, I know a lot of people were saying he was wasting away on TSM because he was never going to start over Bjergsen, and now he's on a different team and he's still not starting. Um, maybe that's more or less what I'm hoping from this team. In all honesty, is I'm hoping at some point when they're seventh in the standings and they feel like changing things up, that we'll see a Blaze Olive play and actually see LCS time.
I
Excuse
think
me.
we will. Demonte kind of has a history of not being able to finish out splits. Whether it's him coming in late to a split or him getting subbed out early for a split. So it's not outside of their own possibility. I think unless unless something happens that makes assassins just the strongest thing in the LCS, I don't think Demonte is gonna be able to keep his starting roster spot, which is a shame because I like the Tanner Time meme, and like watching games where he pops off, and I think he like in interviews and stuff he seems like a nice person. But I don't think Demonte is going to be the starting mid laner at the end of the split.
Yeah, pretty quick one on this one. I think Hanser hasn't looked good for like 3 years, which is a shame because I used to really like Hanser. Um, I think closer is mediocre. Yeah, like middle of the pack jungler. I should say. I shouldn't say mediocre. Demonte, like you said, if assassins come back, if Kiana comes back, gets like 5 buffs in a row, then yeah, Demonte is going to be better than Golden Glue. But overall, like he doesn't play control particularly well. He doesn't play like off meta picks particularly well in the mid lane. You put him on Kiana, he carries. Like you don't, then we got a problem.
And this was Kiana at her most broken,
Yeah, and
just to clarify.
then he also had a arguably better team around him back then. Depending on which team they were actually playing. By Cody Sun. Whereas like, yeah, I think FBI, I think they're gonna do all right. Like I wasn't super unimpressed with who his support performances. Like I think he does his job well enough, and I think FBI can do well. It's more of like a wild turtle situation where, like I said, FBI is going to do well if the enemy team isn't getting on him, and if anything, that Hanser's still good at. He's still good at playing peel tanks and keeping his damage dealers safe. So like I could see this team being all right. Then again, I also said that last year. And like they got fifth, sixth, but they never looked great, even in fifth, sixth. Like, um, they there were a couple games where they're like, oh, okay, they look all right. And there were a lot of games where they're like, oh man, these guys are terrible. So like maybe Demonte is the magic bean for that. I don't think he is, but we'll see. Like I said, I hope at least when they're middling ground, they'll throw a Bailey's all of a bone and put him in for some practice time, like put him in for a couple games, and hopefully he does well. Because I'd love to see him be a wild card that ends up like we've seen where like one really really good player can flip things on its head. I
Yeah,
don't think Blaze Olive, with all his years in the academy, if he was that much of like an ace, someone would have probably picked him up by now. But like, I'm hoping because that would at least be interesting. It'd be less boring.
I agree. Speaking of boring, our next team, I don't think I have anything really to say. 100 Thieves, one of two teams to not have any roster changes. Um, I read actually if you go on to LOL Esports, they have an article and they just break down one thing for each team. And I like what they said about 100 Thieves. In short, they said when you don't make a roster change in a vacuum, it's okay because you're expecting your team to get better at a faster rate than other teams do. However, they're competing with teams like Cloud9, FlyQuest, to an extent, Team Liquid, um, who had very and Evil Geniuses who had very minor roster changes. And I don't think this team has gotten better that much faster. I think Stunt still looks. I think Stunt's still gonna have some of the issues that he had last year. Um, I think Medius is still gonna kind of struggle with being a consistent great jungler, like he did last year. Really, the only bright spot is the fact that Ryoma stepped up towards the end of last split, but he did not step up enough, and he still takes up an import slot unless what you're saying is true. I don't think it's true, but I'll fact check it later. And Cody's son did not look great. Is it because Cody's son was carried by great supports, or because Stunt is not that great of a support? I'm not sure. And of course, someday, still someday.
Yeah, I think the worst part about this team, I think, is the fact that even with like not a lot of roster changes going on, I'd be willing to bet they're going to look really good for like the first 3 or 4 weeks. And by really good, I mean they're just going to win games and people aren't going to notice all the problems. Um, because they already have played for a split together. And while everyone else is kind of adjusting, they're going to be like, oh, we don't have anything to adjust to. Like we've seen it a lot in EU too. We've seen it in past splits where like the team that really didn't change much, like, oh man, no, they're really picking up speed. They literally look good in these first few weeks. And then every other team gets better and they don't. And so they start falling in the standings incredibly rapidly. And I think that's what's going to happen with 100 Thieves is they're going to look pretty good for the first 6 weeks, and then they're going to lose a bunch of games in the last 6 weeks, end up in that sixth or seventh spot, and especially yeah, I think that's just where they're going to end up.
And they don't have any. They don't have a lot of promise in their academy team either. I mean, I think Prismal is really good, but I'd be hard pressed to say that Prismal's better than Cody's son. We've already seen Saligo and Fake God in contracts, and so unless Prismal and Breezy are really good, there's not really like anything to be really excited about 400 Thieves if they're starting to slow down. Next one, I think this is going to be a team that we spend a lot of time on. Maybe Dignitas. Dignitas has said that they're going to run a 10-man roster this year. Um, on paper, kind of stacked. You have a lot of big names on there at the very least. So what I think they're going to start off with, what I think their week one roster is going to be. I haven't checked since we started this podcast to see if they actually announced it yet. I think they're going to have Viper, Acadian, Froggen, Johnson, Aframu as their starting roster. And I disagree with that roster. But before I get into that, what do you think their starting roster is going to be?
So I tend to agree. I think it's probably going to be Viper, Acadian, Froggen, Johnson, and Aframu. Um, and honestly, I could see that being the roster for the entire split. Um, with Acadia and Dardoch being the only ones that get swapped out depending on who's having a worse week. Um, I don't know why Lorlo keeps getting work. I don't know why Phoenix keeps getting work. But even at like Phoenix's best, I don't think he's as like I don't think he's as good as Froggen. Like I think Froggen, while he has his weird meta picks and Anivia God, etc., as opposed to Phoenix, who is a Azir God, always has his like 4 picks, can do good on those, etc. I think Froggen is better because I think Froggen at least has adapted to passing metas a little better than Phoenix
I
has.
mean, he had a sick
Um,
Aurelia.
yeah, so I could still see Phoenix also being subbed in randomly because somehow Phoenix is another one that I'm like, I don't know why people keep hiring you. You haven't been good in like 5 years. Orlo was never good. Dardoch is such a coin flip for someone who used to be so interesting. And then Asta and Jail should never actually see the starting lineup if everything goes well. But it's Dignitas. Things aren't going to go well. Things are going to go terrible. Everyone's going to make memes about it.
So I'm
And then we're going
glad.
to ask, yeah. So I'll let you go off that.
So I'm glad I let you talk first because I disagree a lot with what you said. I think Lorlo, while not a strong top laner, um, I'm pretty sure Lorlo is better than Viper in the top lane. I'm pretty sure unless you let Viper get his counterpick Riven, that he has not looked good in quite some time. You have to remember, this is Viper's third year as a starter for LCS. This is if Lorlo starts this year, I think that this would be his fifth split as a starter in the LCS. So Lorlo is less of a known entity than Viper is. Additionally, I think you're kind of maybe sleeping on Lorlo, Dardoch, Phoenix, which was debatably the best part of Team Liquid before their entire Breaking Point meltdown. I think Dardoch has gone significantly more mature at that point than he was during Breaking Point. Um, and I don't know. I have not been impressed with Froggen since he was on Elements 6 years ago. Actually, that might have been 5 years ago. I've not really been too impressed with Froggen. He keeps getting on these teams, and they keep trying to play around him. And I don't think that really works because Froggen's not really the kind of player to build around. I don't think he much prefers a slower play style. And I know he can play faster. I know he has a really good Aurelia. But being good at something and preferring it are two different things. Um, Dardoch Phoenix was a strong mid jungle duo. Granted, this was a while ago. I'd be kind of excited to see that. Phoenix looked pretty decent last year, despite role swapping to ADC. The only thing though that I think we're gonna disagree on a lot is Aftermove versus JJ. I think JJ was robbed on FlyQuest, and I was kind of surprised that they got rid of him until I found out they got Ignar because I think Ignar is a better support. But honestly, I thought JJ showed a lot of improvement, and I've not really liked Aframu much since Under Thief's second split, where he just kind of dropped off a lot, and there's now questions about his motivation and stuff, and I don't want to get into any of that. But unquestionably, Aframu has not looked as good on the LCS stage as he has before. JJ is still young. I would love to see what he can do.
All right. All right. I can understand that. JJ. I absolutely misread his name as Jail the first time. Uh, I got bad eyes. And so I was just like, who the hell is this no name that Jay's hyping up? But now that I'm thinking about, okay, actually, you know what? I might put him in over Afro. Um, And honestly, I don't think I've ever actually seen Asta play, so I don't know how he is. That being
Yeah.
said, you know what? I'll give it to you. Actually, I did not consider the Lorlo Dardoch Phoenix, especially the Lorlo Dardoch synergy. Honestly, I think that would probably be better than Acadian Viper. Um, and like at that point, yeah, just switch out Phoenix for Froggen because of the synergy there. So you're right, actually. You know what? I could see myself being interested in that. Like I did forget about they used to play ATL together. Like that might be good enough. Of course, Azir and Victor are also currently, well, not currently in meta, but they're not weak. So I could see Phoenix pulling out some wins on that. Um, Obviously, we don't know the meta for the next split, so we never know what's going to happen with those particular picks. But you're right. For right now, I could see them actually switching those three out.
We do know that they're not nerfing mid until after Worlds though, so um, it still be kind of mid centric. And I also want to say I'm really sad for Acadian because I'm always excited for Acadian, and he always somehow finds his way on teams where he just doesn't start for the entire split.
Yep.
um, but next up is another team I think we're going to spend a decent amount of time on. So we're going to go to Immortals. Immortals has announced their roster today. So their starting roster for week one: Soaz in the top lane, Potluck, Ica, Altec, and Gate. Not what I was expecting.
Why would you put why would you put newbies on the team with Soaz, who is going to blow up when they get absolutely railed about why they don't have Xmithy
So,
and Hakuho out?
so here's the interesting thing, specifically with Potluck, is he has played jungle before on academy teams, specifically Golden Guardians Academy. Um, before getting, I don't know if he was benched or what, but last year he was not playing on academy. He was the academy positional coach. So the only thing I could think of is maybe Xmithy's shot calling is not as good as people have been hyping it up for the past 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Whenever I guess it's been about 5 years since he was on COG. Maybe Xmithy is not this great shot caller that people have been hyping him up for. The crazy thing is Xmithy is the highest paid player on Immortals.
Maybe he's cashing out a check before he retires. Maybe this is the last year for Xmithy.
Maybe I mean he does have a history of not playing a lot of solo queue games. Making I think he's one of the only NA pros during Worlds where he doesn't grind up to like challenger in whatever region they're at. So there's that. He does play a lot of other games, and quite frankly, mechanically, he's not been impressive internationally. I think we all have fond memories of Team Liquid, and yeah, well, I guess specifically Team Liquid kind of getting exposed through their jungle, which is weird because he did beat um, Invictus and he did beat GE Tigers on COG. So like he has it in him to be a great international jungler, but he just doesn't seem to grind up for it. Ica, I don't know why Ica's starting. Insanity is another mid laner that people on Reddit are really excited for. Ica couldn't even make EU Masters. Um, but for some reason Zabatine decided to start. Did you see the um did you see the conspiracy theory on Reddit?
No, I did not.
So I can't remember, but it was two people from Potluck, Alltech, and Gate who could speak French because they're Canadian.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Alltech, Apollo. I think they're pretty much the same ADC. I like Apollo better just because I like Apollo Hakuho's um, built-in synergy. They've played together for so long now. They've been on so many different teams, and they always keep getting signed together. Um, really, the bigger surprise for me, um, well, Pollock, Xmithy, biggest surprise. Second biggest surprise, Gate. I did not think Gate would ever find a starting position after his weird tenure with Phoenix One.
I mean, playing all 5 roles, man. The legend himself.
Playing, not winning. But I guess LCS teams see something in him to have him start over Hakuho. Um, it's kind of weird. I thought Hakuho was fine. I I think he's a little overrated after his clutch game where they beat TSM and prevented them from going to the finals for the first time. I think people were hyping up way too much after that. But I still think that hype came from a place because I still think he's a solid support.
Yeah,
Way better than Gate, I think.
yeah.
So that is that's what I've got. Interestingly, so as either earlier today or yesterday was saying that he doesn't even know if he's starting for Immortals because they haven't announced their roster yet, and then Immortals announced it shortly after that. And we all know that Soaz is a rock as far as his mentality is concerned. So,
I don't know why he's still here, man. I was really hoping he'd leave after last split, but he didn't. Still here
you know, the things you do.
for money.
So, do you have anything to add to here?
No, honestly, not really.
All right, so we didn't
This
spend as
this team
much.
is, yeah, this team I'm not excited for in the slightest. They're so mediocre.
Just as a spoiler alert, I have them ranked the same place that I had them ranked last year, and I was almost proven wrong last year. So, or last split, I should say. Next team, we've got Team Liquid, same exact team as they've had last split, with the exception that Brox is now in the States and doesn't have to wait half of the freaking split to get here. Um, and Tactical. Tactical looks so happy. And Rockin kind of looks like the bad guy skateboarder from Scott Pilgrim, which you've never seen. I think is what you said.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't really have much to say about this team. I actually think the addition of Brox and Tactical does way more for his team than Brox at Double Lift because Broxa tends to well, it's hard to say, right? Because he's only played for Fnatic and Reckles does not really Reckles is kind of a self-sustaining ADC, I think, where he doesn't need
Yeah.
a lot of babysitting. So maybe Broxa prefers playing around other lanes. But I'm kind of excited. I think people are hyping this team up a lot, and they're kind of sleeping on how much Double Lift really contributed to how well this team did. But I'm excited to see how this team goes.
Yeah, I tend to agree. All of this, of course, is going to hinge on, does Impact carry this split? Which Jensen are we going to see tag up this split? Are Tactical and Core JJ going to work well together? I think Broxa, regardless of how this team meshes, is going to play pretty well. I think it'll be interesting to see now that bot lane isn't such a resource sink if he's just going to basically keep Jensen and Impact afloat and push them forward, because we've seen like when Jensen does get a lot of jungle attention, he can carry games like how he used to on C9.
Yeah.
Um, Impact, like I said, depends which one shows up. Like he could be fantastic, and then this team is top three. He could be mediocre, and they're top five. I still would put them in the higher end, like regardless of how Tactical does, just because I do put a little bit of weight on everyone basically knowing, well, Double is just going to, keel out this split. He doesn't actually care. And I think that probably was a poison mentality that ended up hurting them a lot last split. So I think they are gonna be in at least the top six. Like, but they got the parts. We just got to see how they fit together.
Yeah, and I will say it's kind of interesting. Earlier you mentioned Double Lift basically grooming Biofrost. I don't like that term. Double Lift basically created Biofrost, molded him to the support that he wants. And a lot of
Yep.
people are saying Core JJ can do the same exact thing with Tactical and basically create this perfect ADC that he wants. With the benefit, I don't know if you remember this, Core JJ used to play ADC, so he kind of has an edge on Double Lift 2. Okay, Double Lift played Blitzcrank Season 1. That doesn't count as playing a support. So, which, if anyone listens to this, Double Lift used to be a Blitzcrank one trick. Blitzcrank one trick. Um, I do kind of hope Rockin starts, just because, God, he looks intimidating. That is the most terrifying photo ever. He he looks like a villain, and I'm into it.
Yeah.
Kind of like on a random note though. Before we move on to the last team, have you noticed like how some of these like pictures look really good? I mean, like obviously, I think this is the same picture Impact used last year. I don't know why he has that mustache. The picture that they have for Viper, you could tell that he just kind of let the quarantine get to him, and he just hasn't had a haircut since January. And I don't know, it's just really funny. If you want a bigger laugh, go onto Dignitas's website and look at the pictures they have for their League of Legends roster. It looks like it was taken on a $40 digital camera.
Yep.
So let's go on to our last team before we break down what we think how the split's going to end up. We've got same exact team that finished that split last year, and apparently Scrim Gods. If Reaper kind of dispelled it, saying he didn't think that COG was that much better, but other people are claiming that COG are dominating scrims. What are your thoughts on that?
Let's all clap our hands together and say it. Scream, scrims. Fuck that. Scrims
Scrims don't
don't mean
matter.
jack shit. God, how many years have we heard that this team is scrimming really well? How many times have we heard these people are scrim gods and they get on stage and they're complete and utter garbage? Like even like for the great teams, when people are like, yeah, we're just getting stopped at scrims, they'll still drop games in really dumb ways. Scrims do not matter. CLG is the bottom of the barrel. They are going to be bottom two. Pobelter will probably bottom four. They might make playoffs just because there's 8 teams in playoffs now. Because Pobelter can sometimes pull just a win out of nowhere. But this is the same team as last split. This team is still garbage. Like there's like I do not know what especially like for how long CLG has been around, why whoever owns the team now, because I know it's not Hotshot anymore. Um I don't know why they just refuse to put any money into this team and try to make anything better. But here we are again for like the 5th year, or no, like 3 or 4 years now. Like it has been Stixay,
Oh
right?
no, it has been 4.5 years.
Yeah, 4.5 years of Stixay, going off that one MSI where he did really well. Somehow he's still here. Like honestly, I agree with you that Wild Turtle shouldn't be in the league anymore. Like we really need to make room for like young and up and coming like ADCs to try to find a little more talent. But like Stixay is another one. Like he used to be that up and coming talent, but he has just not improved at all in the last 2-3 years. And yeah, this team garbage.
And
Like
I want to point out, because you brought up you brought up the it wasn't MSI, it was IEM.
no, they
I
got
think
semis and MSI, didn't they?
they got, yeah, no, you're right. So I just want to point out that the time that Stix 8 popped off, he was he was essentially a Tristana one trick. He looked awful that split. I don't know if people remember. He looked awful his first split, except on Tristana. And for whatever reason, no one else thought to build Ginsu's on Tristana besides Stixay. This was when Ginsu had that weird AoE effect. And I'll admit, his Tristana was really good. He was the first person I've ever seen pull a lane using Tristana as an ADC. Um, and freezing a lane as Tristana ADC, to be honest. Since that first split, though, Tristana has not been meta. None of his champions have been meta. He has not looked good. He's not. I'm not. He's not a bottom feeder. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna go that far when we still have, you know, Wild Turtle. I guess. I don't. You know what? Maybe he is a bottom feeder. But I'm just. It's a problem when you're still looking at 6A saying at some point he'll reach his potential, and you forget the fact that he started in 2015.
Yeah, trash team, bottom four, and that's only because I think there's a lot of other really bad teams here, and CLG's been known for getting really random wins. But if they make it to playoffs, they aren't lasting very long in it.
See, I think they'll do slightly better than what you're saying, simply because I still believe in Wiggly. I think Wiggly looked bad last year because Ruin was doing really bad, and Crown was doing really bad, and 6A was doing really bad. And there's like, where do you go as a jungler at that point? I think with Pobelter being able to ground him, even if he's not camping for Pobelter, he can at least rely on one lane that's not going to be losing. I think that's something Pobelter is really good at, is not losing lane. He doesn't necessarily win lanes, but I think he's really good at being stable in lane. What I would really like to see is Ruin getting replaced, and then Stixay getting replaced, because at least Stixay is serviceable. I don't think you can say the same thing about Ruin. If you were going to replace one of the two, I would replace Ruin before I replace Stixay.
I don't know, man. I don't even know anymore. I still think I'd replace Stixay just because like this team needs more of a shakeup than this that. Like they need an old guard to be kicked to the curb and like someone new to come in.
Ruin's pretty
Because
old, not to CLG, but just in League in general.
yeah, honestly, replace them both. You have zero imports. Like I know that we're going away from imports, but if you're not gonna pick up better talent from academy,
I mean,
then
Ruin's
import
an
away.
import.
Yeah, I meant good imports. Phoenix was an import at one point too, and I don't think that was worth it either. Huhi was wait, right? Yeah, Huhi was an import at one point too.
He was. He actually just recently became a resident.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was worth it back then either. So
Hui was such a weird choice. I guess they saw like potential in him, and then he became an Aurelian one trick, and Aurelian has never been meta. So now that we've looked at all of the rosters, here is my top 10, rank 1 to rank 10. And I have this broken up into 4 separate groups. So first group, Cloud9. Only Cloud9
yep,
at first place. Second,
agreed.
my second group. This is the order I think they're going to end up, but honestly, it could be a mishmash between any of these. Is Team Liquid, FlyQuest, TSM, and Evil Geniuses. I think at most they're going to be one game apart from each other, 1 or 2 games apart from each other. I would not be surprised if at some point those four are gonna, 2 of those 4 are gonna have to go through a tiebreaker. And then next up, my third group, I have CLG, Golden Guardians, 100 Thieves. These are the teams that I think are going to be the last 3 to make playoffs. I'm not married to that order. That's just kind of the order I think that they'll end up. And
Hmm.
then the 2 teams I don't think are even going to make playoffs are Dignitas and Immortals. If you don't have your roster set before the first week of LCS, and what I mean by that is if you're, it's Wednesday today as we're recording this, um, Immortals just announced their roster today, um, with SOAS publicly saying, I don't know if I'm starting yet or not. And Dignitas hasn't even announced their roster yet. I don't think you're going to have a good start. I don't think that instills a lot of faith in your team. I don't think that means that you've been practicing that much during the off season to build up synergy. I think lots of issues happen because of that. I don't think they're going to make playoffs.
Well, Overall, I basically all of our groups are basically the same. Like I'd put TSM higher than FlyQuest, and I knocked FlyQuest down. I'd put CLG switch out for Immortals, but honestly, past that, our lists are basically the same.
So you think Immortals will make playoffs, but CLG won't?
Yes,
Okay. Yeah, I mean, any of the bottom five teams, honestly, I think can miss playoffs. Any two of those five can be the bottom two and not make
and
playoffs.
honestly, if you're in the bottom five of this LCS, you're probably not going to make a splash in playoffs regardless. So you might as well like. If we're going to be honest here, it's basically 5 and up, and even then, that might be generous. It might be 4 and up are the only ones we're actually watching playoffs for a chance to be better at. I think really anything below that is just going to be a clown fiesta where they might have a couple fun games to watch where someone does something really dumb with like an off meta pick or someone gets their one trick like Viper and has like a really good game and everyone's memeing about that. But at the end of the day, I think those top 4 teams are going to be the ones that we're really going to actually be watching to see like as a barometer of okay, other than Cloud9, how else is NA's chance look at Worlds? And it's probably going to be a lot of not good, not great, not we're not going to no. We're definitely going to be going in with our heads in the sand. I think this Worlds, but you never know. Maybe someone's had an epiphany, suddenly started actually learning new things in the game, and all these old rosters. We'll see what happens.
All right.
So maybe TSM wins the split again somehow. You never know.
All right. So 5 second question. Three teams that we're sending to Worlds, and go.
TSM, TL, and C9.
I think I agree. I'm torn between TSM and FlyQuest, but I don't think FlyQuest is good enough in best of, which is ironic because they got second place last split. But I don't think FlyQuest is good enough at best ofs to go against a consistent Team Liquid and TSM. And that's really the big thing. Is if we have some blow up like we did last split, anything can happen.
True. I'd definitely like to see FlyQuest over one of the big three because I always enjoy seeing new names at Worlds. I really liked being able to see 100 Thieves until we actually saw 100 Thieves at Worlds, and then we were like, oh no.
Yeah, or a Clutch Gaming.
I enjoyed Clutch at Worlds. Like they had no expectations and they still tried. I just enjoy seeing a different banner up there.
That's fair. All right. Well, we took up an hour and a half of your time.
Yeah, it's not
Um,
as bad. We've done worse.
yeah. Uh, probably. I don't know. I don't know if we're gonna do more podcasts. I kind of like doing these like preview ones, but yeah. We'll try doing better. Maybe we'll do a. We've been practicing our casting, so maybe you'll see some of that. But until then, this has been low tier talks league, low tier talks high tier. I don't remember. It's been that long.
Yeah, we switched between them a couple times.
You've been listening to our League of Legends podcast. Thank you.